Welcome to this episode of The Good, The Bad and The Odd with your host Mark. Today I'd like to talk about the 1973 movie The Exorcist. This came out, well, as I say, in 1973, directed by William Friedkin, who's got a really quite terrific record as a director. He's made some sort of landmark films. I mean, there's obviously The Exorcist, there's The French Connection, quite a cool film, which was I think a remake of the French film Wage of Fear called Sorcerer, To Live and Die in LA. More recently, famous ones are, I think, Bug and Killer Joe. Killer Joe's really quite talented as a good film, but this, to me, this is the quintessential Friedkin film. There's real class and style to this film, and tension, and also it's got I mean, obviously it's a 70s film. It's got a real 70s feel in terms of the film stock, and in terms of the characters are allowed to develop in a way they're often not allowed to do these days, unless it's like an art house film. It was based on a novel by William Peter Blatty, written in 1971, which I've read, and it's quite a good novel, and mostly the film follows it. I mean, it cuts a lot of backstory out and a few bits and bobs, but essentially it follows the same story. The main actors in it are Ellen Burstyn's in it as the mother of the possessed girl, Linda Blair, who put in a terrific performance as a young girl in this, and also some brilliant voice acting by Mercedes McCambridge as the demon, the Zuzu voice. Max von Sydow's in it, looking, funny enough, looking kind of like he does now, because he's in old man makeup, and it's pretty good old man makeup, so it kind of looks like he does now in this film of 40 years ago. And I remember I was 8 when this came out in the cinema. There was a big fuss when this came out. People found it really frightening. People were fainting in the aisles, getting really worked up about it and stuff like that. And I can see why. I mean, this is Mark Kermode's favourite film, I think. He's certainly written books about it, and he does. Yeah, it is his favourite film. I know it is. He's talked about it many times on his podcast and such like. And I can kind of see why. It's got a real style and class to it. It also doesn't fall into the trap that most horror films fall into, which is it falls down on either the second or the third act. Most a lot of horror films have a really good build-up. They can be really good to start with, and then it kind of I think I've talked about this before. Stephen King, in his book Dance Macabre, talks about horror as a genre having 3 levels, which is tension, horror, and the gross out. Tension being there's a door and you haven't opened the door yet. Horror being when you open the door and you see what's behind the door. And even with that, however horrible it is, there's also a slight relief put into that, because I've seen it, so it could have been worse. Instead of being a 100-foot monster, it could have been a 120-foot monster, say. And then there's the gross out, which is there's something gross on the screen to try and promote your gag reflex. The Exorcist uses all 3 of these quite wisely and well, but a lot of horror films, for example, their first act can be really good tension, but as soon as you start seeing the monsters or whatever the thing horror is about, it kind of starts to fall apart, or when you start to know what's going on, a lot of horror films fall down at that time, and there's very few mainstream horror films that actually succeed on any level. Even they don't even do the first act that well. The Exorcist is one mainstream horror film that does it well. Another one would be something like The Shining, possibly Silence of the Lambs if you count horror, but it does it really well. It's quite, as I say, it's quite faithful to the book. The book's a quite a good read, and it's just the staging, the effort, the intensity that really makes this film a good horror film. The fact that they built it in a refrigerated sound stage so you could see their breath towards the end while they were talking or breathing or whatever, so you knew it was cold in the room. You got a real feel for the intensity in there. Everything's closed in, everything's claustrophobic, and it's just a wonderfully constructed film. I don't think I can really find any fault with it. I can like I say, I can kind of see why Kermode puts it as his best film ever. It's one of those films. It's really hard to see how it could be improved. in its own on its own terms by a slightly different edit or something like that. In fact, I think the theatrical edit is the best one. There is an edit where you see what's called the spider walk, which is Linda Blair kind of walking down the stairs, arched back, upside down kind of thing, like a contortionist. Doesn't really work for me. The rest of the film does indeed work. Now, the film provided a number of sequels. I think there's been prequels too. There was certainly a really weird sequel called The Exorcist 2, directed by John Boorman, who's made some great films such as Deliverance, the King Arthur one, was it Excalibur? That was quite a good film. But he's also had some missteps in the early 70s as well. Zardoz was one, Exorcist 2, The Heretic was another, which is really odd. It tried to turn it into a big philosophical discussion on the nature of good and evil in the universe and stuff like that. Didn't work. Well, didn't work as a horror film, didn't work as a film. It's an interesting watch. I'd watch it once, but I'd never watch it again. It's just it doesn't work. This film, though, I thoroughly recommend, and I think I'd give it in the 90s out of 100. It's that good. Rather enjoyed it. I'd definitely recommend this. I saw the Blu-ray, but I had seen a preview of this DVD version. The Blu-ray I saw was the version you've never seen, which, funny enough, didn't have the spider walk. I was expecting it to be in there. And I've seen the DVD, which is a brilliant transfer too. The Blu-ray looks spectacular, but the DVD actually looked pretty damn good too. So I wouldn't say that the Blu-ray is a massive improvement over previous DVD versions, but it was. I liked it. I really enjoyed this film. And if you haven't seen it, please see it. Please, if you like horror films and you like tension and you like being enthralled throughout the running time of a film, please go ahead and watch this. And as I say, it's one of those few mainstream horror films that managed to work and sustain its brilliance through all three acts. Okay then, bye.
The power to tramp underfoot serpents and scorpions. Grant me, your unworthy servant, pardon for all his sins, and power to confront sin. See the cross of the Lord. Begone, you hostile powers.